Pickup truck, well, even the average pickup truck now is going to be crossing over that $50,000 barrier.
A truck can be powerful, beautiful, and still be a mistake. Because in 2006, the risk isn't horsepower, it's ownership friction. The kind that starts small. A warning light, an update loop, a sensor glitch. Then it grows into parts delays, dealership queues, and resale anxiety. Buyers keep getting told to expect quirks. But quirks are expensive when this truck is your work, your commute, your schedule. So tonight, we're cutting through the hype with 9 pickups to avoid this year, and 2 that are actually worth your money. Tesla Cybertruck. The earliest wave of a new truck is always a mirror. It reflects what a company prioritizes, what it rushed, and what it still has to learn once real owners start stacking real miles. When the focus is radical design and headline presence, the hidden cost is often refinement, how things fit, how they hold, and how they age when the truck stops being a spectacle and starts being transportation. This one arrives with a reputation before it has a long history, and that alone should slow buyers down, not because it cannot become great, but because early ownership is where the unknowns live. The first signals have been hard to ignore. Multiple safety recalls in its first year of broad visibility, including one tied to a pedal component and others tied to hardware that should feel settled on day one. When those items show up early, it suggests a truck still finding its mature form in public. The deeper concern is not any single fix. It is the way the product is built around unconventional choices, materials, manufacturing methods, and control systems that are still rare in mainstream service networks. In practice, that can mean repairs that do not behave like normal repairs. Panels and trim that are simple on a traditional truck can become specialized here. And because demand is high and production is still scaling, small issues can turn into waiting games, with owners stuck between mobile service, schedules, and parts availability. For some buyers, that is acceptable. They want the experience, the look, the moment. But if you are buying a pickup to be boringly dependable, if it needs to start every morning, haul without drama, and live at a job site, this is the kind of truck you rent for curiosity, not finance for stability. In 2026, the risk is not that it is bad. The risk is that it is still becoming itself, and you are paying premium money to be part of the process. Some trucks are risky because they are experimental. Others are risky because they are excellent ideas trapped inside a young ownership ecosystem. Rivian R1T. There is a special kind of frustration that comes from loving how something drives while quietly dreading what it might do next. That is the tension with a premium electric pickup that is genuinely capable and genuinely enjoyable, yet still shows signs of growing pains that traditional buyers are not used to budgeting for. This one has built real credibility in the way it moves, the way it puts power down, and the way it feels engineered with intention. But ownership is not a test drive. Ownership is the accumulation of small events, a warning message that disappears, a sensor that comes back, a software update that solves one thing and creates another. Over the last couple of years, recall activity and reliability ratings have kept the conversation unsettled. Recalls tied to lighting performance in cold conditions and advanced driver assistance software behavior are the kind of issues that do not always strand you, but they do shake trust. And then there is the repair reality. Even when warranty support is strong, the network is not built like a century-old manufacturer's network. That matters when your truck is your schedule. If you live near a service center, your experience can be smooth. If you do not, routine inconveniences can become logistical puzzles. A pickup buyer expects a wide safety, net-independent shops, parts on shelves, technicians who have seen the problem before. This ecosystem is improving, but it is not yet universal. In 2026, the truck can be worth it for a certain kind of owner, patient, tech-comfortable, and located near support. But for the buyer who wants predictable downtime, predictable maintenance, and predictable resale, it remains a gamble. Not because the truck lacks talent, because the ownership infrastructure still has to catch up to what the truck promises. Now the story moves from niche to volume because millions buy this trucks expecting set-it-forget-it living. Then a few electronic quirks become thousands of complaints, plus long dealership queues nationwide each year. Chevrolet Colorado. Fresh redesigns usually feel like progress, until you live with them long enough to discover what new really means. A mid-size pickup can look perfectly sorted, great stance, modern cabin, strong torque, while quietly carrying the kind of software and electrical headaches that only appear after the first few months of real use. This one has been caught in that exact tension. The truck is competitive on paper and often impressive from behind the wheel. But the ownership chatter has repeatedly circled the same theme: electronics and infotainment behavior that feels inconsistent, including over-the-air update problems that can create battery drain scenarios and strange shutdown behavior. Even when fixes exist, the point is not whether a bulletin can be issued. The point is how often the buyer has to think about it. A truck should not feel like it is negotiating with you. There is also the platform reality. When a manufacturer rolls out a major new architecture and pushes modern screens, connectivity, and integrated controls deeper into the experience, the margin for small bugs shrinks. The more the truck routes through software, the more a minor glitch can feel like a major flaw. Owners who just want a simple daily truck end up learning menus, resets, and update timing. That is not what most buyers are signing up for. In 2026, the bigger risk is not one catastrophic failure. It is the slow erosion of confidence, the moment you hesitate before a long drive, because you are not sure whether the screen will behave. You have already lost the simplicity a mid-size pickup is supposed to offer. If you find one that has proven trouble-free, great. But if you are buying new and you value calm ownership, this is a model where caution is not pessimism, it is prudence. Colorado issues show up under a mainstream price. The next one sells a premium wrapper around the same core. Compared side by side, extra trim rarely solves software instability for buyers seeking calm. At this point, most buyers are already questioning something. Which one on this list would you still consider, and which one would you walk away from immediately? Share your take below. If this perspective is helping you think differently, hit like and subscribe for the next chapters. GMC Canyon. A premium sibling can feel like the safer choice. The trim looks nicer, the cabin feels richer, and the price suggests extra care went into the product. But when two trucks share the same bones, the same software architecture, and the same update pipeline, the difference can be cosmetic, while the risks stay identical. This one sits in that uncomfortable space. It often feels like the more upscale option in the midsize world, and it can be genuinely appealing for buyers who want comfort without going full size. The problem is that many of the reported frustrations track the same patterns as its platform twin: infotainment instability, odd electronic behavior, and the kind of intermittent issues that are difficult to reproduce at a dealership. Those are the worst problems to own because they turn you into a storyteller instead of a driver. It only does it sometimes is how long ownership battles begin. The cost pressure adds another layer. A truck positioned as a premium midsize asks the buyer to accept a higher payment in exchange for a smoother experience. If the experience is not smoother, if it includes the same software resets, the same glitches, the same waiting for updates, then the premium becomes harder to justify. That is where resentment forms. Buyers do not regret buying a truck because it is imperfect. They regret buying a truck because the imperfections feel out of character for the price. In 2026, this is a truck to avoid if your main goal is low drama and long-term predictability. Not because it cannot be good, because it has shown enough signs of electronic friction that you should not assume the premium badge protects you from the platform reality. The mid-size problems are annoying. The full-size problems get expensive, because when the truck is bigger, the fixes and the downtime usually are too. Chevrolet Silverado 1,500. At this point, the full-size pickup is not just a vehicle. It is a financing strategy, a family plan, and for many owners, the backbone of work. That is why certain problems hit harder here. When a mid-size truck has a glitch, you complain. When a full-size truck has a pattern, you start calculating what the truck is costing you in time. This one is everywhere for a reason. It offers strong configurations, serious capability, and a familiarity that makes it feel like the default choice. The warning signs are not about whether it can tow or haul. They are about complexity, stacked on top of complexity, especially when specific engine options and modern electronics intersect. Over the last couple of years, the broader conversation has included engine reliability concerns tied to certain V8 cylinder applications and a large-scale recall activity that signals how high the stakes have become. When an investigation turns into a major recall, it tells you the issue was not isolated. Even if your truck is not affected, the ownership atmosphere changes. Resale value becomes more sensitive to engine codes and option packages. Buyers start asking extra questions, dealers start steering conversations, and the owner starts wondering if they chose the safe build or the risky one. That mental load matters, because it is the opposite of what a mainstream truck purchase is supposed to feel like. In 2026, the Silverado 1500 is not automatically a no. It is a be specific. Be specific about engine choice. Be specific about build date. Be specific about recall completion, because the difference between a great ownership experience and a frustrating one can come down to the exact configuration you picked. And most buyers do not want to shop a truck like they are defusing a device. When a platform spreads across brands, problems do not stay local. They travel quietly through shared parts, shared suppliers, and shared assumptions. GMC Sierra 1500. A premium full-size pickup can feel like a smarter bet. It looks more refined, offers more upscale trims, and often attracts buyers who want to avoid the rough edges of mainstream ownership. But premium does not always mean simpler. Sometimes it means more systems, more features, and more opportunities for something to behave unexpectedly. This one shares a deep mechanical relationship with its sibling, and that matters because the concerns have not been limited to one badge. The broader discussion around certain V8 cylinder engine issues, recall activity, and the reality of modern electronic integration shows up here too. When a truck combines high power output with modern fuel management, advanced driver assistance systems, and always connected infotainment, the ownership story becomes less about the engine alone and more about the total system. A small failure in one area can trigger warnings across the truck, turning a simple issue into a complicated experience. There is also the premium expectation problem. When buyers pay more, they expect fewer inconveniences. If the truck needs repeated visits for software updates, sensor behavior, or recall-related inspections, the premium starts to feel like a tax rather than an upgrade. And that is how people end up avoiding a truck, even if they love it. They do not hate it, they just do not want to babysit it. In 2026, this is a model where the best advice is to resist the temptation of fully loaded, unless you genuinely want every system it includes. The simpler the configuration, the fewer surprises you are likely to face. And if your goal is long-term calm, you might choose a truck that asks less of you in the first place. But let me ask you, is the fuel-saving promise worth the added layers? If the truck powers a job site, what happens after a hybrid warning appears? That question sets up the next pick for 2026. Ford F-150 PowerBoost Full Hybrid Electric. The hybrid promise is seductive. Better fuel efficiency, instant torque, quieter operation, and the feeling that you are buying the future without giving up capability. But hybrids add layers-high voltage systems, additional cooling needs, extra control modules, and layers create new failure points. When it works, it feels like magic. When it misbehaves, it can feel like you bought complexity disguised as convenience. This one sits right in that tension. The platform is hugely popular and deeply capable, but reliability rankings and recall history have been uneven enough to raise eyebrows, especially in certain recent years. Some recall items have involved concerns that are not just annoying, but confidence-shaking. Things tied to power delivery behavior, electrical system integrity, or even the way basic warning chimes and safety systems behave. None of that means your truck will fail. It means the margin for calm ownership is narrower than buyers expect when they hear best-selling. The bigger issue in 2026 is that the hybrid version changes the resale conversation. A used truck buyer can understand a traditional gasoline engine. A used truck buyer gets cautious when the truck includes high-voltage components, unique repair procedures, and a smaller pool of technicians who truly specialize in that system. That does not make the truck bad. It makes it harder to sell without a discount if the market gets nervous. If you love the concept and you want the generator-like capability and torque delivery, you can still buy it wisely. But the safest approach is to treat it like a technology purchase, not just a truck purchase. Warranty coverage, service access, and recall completion become part of the deal. And for buyers who simply want a truck that disappears into their life, that is often one step too far. Sometimes the biggest risk is not what the truck is today, but what it becomes when a company is mid-transition, old powertrains, new software, new strategies, and shifting priorities. Ram 1500. A comfortable truck can hide its vulnerabilities behind a great ride and a great interior. That is what makes ownership risk tricky here. If a pickup feels smooth, quiet, and premium, buyers assume the engineering underneath is equally settled. But the modern truck world is full of systems that are invisible until they are not. This one has long attracted buyers who want the most relaxed daily experience in a full-size format. The cabin often feels like it was designed by people who actually live with vehicles, not just sell them. The problem is that recent recall activity has included issues tied to core safety systems, like electronic stability control behavior. When recalls involve systems that are meant to work silently in the background, it changes how you perceive the vehicle. It is no longer just a comfortable truck. It is a comfortable truck you hope never surprises you. Add in the broader industry, context, software-driven features, increasing reliance on screens, and companies shifting their future powertrain plans, and you get a truck that can feel caught between eras. In 2026, that matters because buyers want clarity. They want to know what the long-term support story looks like. They want to know whether parts supply and dealership training are stable. They want to know whether the next model year will make their truck feel obsolete overnight. This is why the Ram 1500 can be a truck to avoid for cautious buyers. Not because it lacks strengths, because the surrounding uncertainty makes the purchase feel less like a settled decision and more like a moving target. This uncertainty feels corporate, but some brands' uncertainty feels personal, since buyers choose it for calm. Compared with rivals, any recall headline hits harder on a Trust First badge in 2026 for shoppers, Toyota Tundra. When buyers choose a truck for peace of mind, they are not buying horsepower. They are buying the ability to stop thinking about their vehicle. That is why certain problems land harder when they show up here. Even a rumor can dent confidence. A pattern can reshape an entire segment's perception. This one entered a new era with a modern powertrain strategy that made sense on paper. Efficiency, torque, and updated technology. But the last couple of years have included a level of recall visibility that surprised people who assumed this badge was immune to drama. Issues have ranged from software-related camera behavior to more serious conversation around engine manufacturing concerns and the kind of failures that no owner wants to even imagine. When a truck's identity is trust, anything that challenges that identity hits twice as hard. In 2026, the real risk is not that every truck is affected. The risk is that buyers are forced to shop carefully in a space they expected to be simple. Build dates, engine codes, service campaigns, updated parts. Suddenly, you are doing homework. And while doing homework is smart, it is not what most people want when they buy a mainstream full-size pickup. If you already own one that has been perfect, you may have a great truck. But if you are shopping fresh, this is a model where the safest move is patience. Let the dust settle. Let the updated fixes prove themselves in the real world. Because the moment the safe choice stops feeling safe, the cost of being early is not just money, it is regret. Now, after 9 models of caution, it would be easy to assume the whole market is a minefield. It is not. There are still trucks that win by being predictable, not flashy. Nissan Frontier. Some trucks don't chase headlines. They do not lead with the biggest screen or the boldest powertrain. They keep their purpose tight. Get in, haul, drive, repeat, and that simplicity becomes their advantage when complexity starts wearing thin. This one leans on that restraint. A traditional gasoline powertrain, conventional design, and an absence of experimental features help it avoid the ownership friction that comes with chasing trends. You won't find futuristic displays or overcomplicated drive modes. And for many owners, that's exactly the point. The ride can feel stiff, and refinement lags behind new arrivals. But that roughness serves a purpose. You know what you're getting. Repairs are straightforward. Independent shops aren't intimidated. It behaves like a tool, not a platform for new ideas. And that honesty helps it wear the miles better. There's also a mental shift. when you own something like this. You don't wait for over-the-air updates to fix strange quirks. You don't refresh forums to diagnose warning lights. You simply use it. That freedom from attention is what a truck is supposed to offer. In 2026, when many models feel like experiments with wheels, this one stays grounded. If your priority is reliability over novelty, and you're fine skipping flashier tech, this is still one of the safest bets in the mid-size segment. And then there is the truck that proves something else entirely, that a model can stumble in its first year and still climb back into form once the early dust clears. Toyota Tacoma. New generations bring upgrades, but also the chance to stumble. The latest version of this one arrived with modernized powertrains, a reworked cabin, and a lot of optimism. But new platforms take time to settle, and the early phase raised reasonable questions. Initial recalls, such as those tied to braking components, shook confidence, not because they were catastrophic, but because they suggested the truck still needed time to stabilize. Still, what matters most is not the presence of issues, but how they resolve. And over the last year, ownership feedback has started to shift in the right direction. This is what happens when a platform matures. Problems become known, fixes become routine, and buyers get clarity about what they're walking into. That clarity helps resale, makes service easier, and calms the long-term equation. If you want mid-size capability without entering a gamble, this is one of the few that earns trust back. Instead of asking for blind loyalty, just make sure you're buying the version that's past its growing pains, where updates are complete, and the rhythm of ownership has returned. In a market crowded with complexity, predictability wins. Not flashy, not perfect, just dependable. If this helped you see past the noise, like the video and subscribe for grounded truck analysis. And leave a comment with the model you trust or the one you walked away from. Toyota Tacoma. New generations bring upgrades, but also the chance to stumble. The latest version of this one arrived with modernized powertrains, a reworked cabin, and a lot of optimism. But new platforms take time to settle, and the early phase raised reasonable questions. Initial recalls, such as those tied to braking components, shook confidence, not because they were catastrophic, but because they suggested the truck still needed time to stabilize. Still, what matters most is not the presence of issues, but how they resolve. And over the last year, ownership feedback has started to shift in the right direction. This is what happens when a platform matures. Problems become known, fixes become routine, and buyers get clarity about what they're walking into. That clarity helps resale, makes service easier, and calms the long-term equation. If you want mid-size capability without entering a gamble, this is one of the few that earns trust back. Instead of asking for blind loyalty, just make sure you're buying the version that's past its growing pains, where updates are complete, and the rhythm of ownership has returned. In a market crowded with complexity, predictability wins. Not flashy, not perfect, just dependable. If this helped you see past the noise, like the video and subscribe for grounded truck analysis. And leave a comment with the model you trust or the one you walked away from.